welcome to Fast Talk, your source for the science of endurance performance.
Say it like you mean it.
No. Again.
I was confident, and then I'm like, is performance the right word?
It is.
Don't guess.
It is.
Don't guess.
What is it? Did I
Do
get
it
it right?
Do it.
You did.
Do it. Come on, do it. Another
Your
rep.
source
Do it.
for the science of performance.
No, that was worse. Do it again.
Hello and welcome to Fast Talk, your source for the science of endurance performance.
It's close enough.
Closing up. There we go.
Hey, guess what? Potluck.
It's a potluck.
Actually, you know what? Can Chris do it? I love Chris's intro.
She's
So
got
Chris,
a great radio.
It
do
is
the intro.
so good.
Do you
Hey,
remember?
everyone. Welcome to another episode of Fast Talk, your source for the science of endurance performance. I'm your host, Chris Case, amongst a bunch of fools.
Like butter.
No, but God, you make me feel so good being a fool. Just listening. I could listen to this intro. You know what? I'm going to listen to the first 10 seconds of every Fast Talk
On loop.
podcast and just pause it after that.
So we had a theme for this episode.
Really? You're trying to move on that?
I know. Really?
So
Okay.
I got to set the stage. This was called the Griffin birthday episode because it's her birthday in a couple of days. Griffin sent us 2 questions she really wanted answered for her birthday episode. Griffin is sitting in an airport somewhere. She had to spend the night there. She is not joining us.
And we
If she
will not
cared,
be
she could have
answering her
remoted
questions.
in. Hello, Griffin.
She could have, wherever she might be.
She could have rented a car, driven through the night
She
to
could have
get
done
here.
this.
What airport is she in?
I don't even know.
Denver.
Still waiting on an Uber.
Where the heck is that guy? I'm looking for the green Camry. It says green Camry. Where is it?
889. Do you see a license plate 889?
So for all of you listeners, we don't have Griffin here to keep us under control. If you want to stop now, please do.
I don't think that's really Griffin's job.
It's not.
I mean, she's been part of the problem as much as anything.
Part of the
in some of
problem.
these.
Yes, we can.
I think without Griffin here, we can all be much more mature.
We probably can.
It's like a flock of seagulls collar over there.
Yep.
Well,
That's
Chris,
a crow. Well, I'm close enough. You know, I can't. How do you make a you make a seagull sound? You can't do it.
Fly like a seagull.
No, I'm not going to try.
No.
I'll do it. I'll do it after the show for you, Rob.
Let my spirit carry me.
Oh God.
Every athlete wants to peak at the right time. Athletica helps make that happen with real-time adaptation and science-based planning. Your training evolves as you do, so when race day comes, you're ready. Go visit athletica.ai and use the code FASTTALK for 15% off a 6-month subscription. We'll see you there.
So, Chris,
Yes.
good to
as the
see you here.
guest.
Yes. Thank you.
Happy to have you. Do you have a question?
I do have a question. I want to know, we've all trained for a lot of events of various kinds in our life. We're always sort of preparing for something or just finishing up something. And I want to know what it is that you're either preparing for or just finished up and what lesson you took from that. Because I feel like we've all done this a very long time. We're also still constantly learning stuff about ourselves and how to train and how to do it better and nutrition, whatever aspect it is. So yeah, we can go around the room and just talk about an experience like that. Who wants to start? Grant?
I think I can look at this in kind of a bigger picture, more global thing. My kids are 6 and 10, almost 7 and 10 now. And they play lacrosse and they swim and they do all these things. And I've mentioned this kind of in passing on the podcast a couple times, but my weekends are gone. Every Saturday from beginning of April through the end of May is lacrosse games.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 2 of them playing now. So it's not like, oh, we go for one. It's 4 or 5 hours of driving, going to lacrosse games, driving home. I can't train on the weekends anymore. I can barely race. So I think the biggest thing for me was looking at that and saying, okay, I need to find ways to test myself, stay motivated, see what I'm doing. But I also need to change my training completely because I can't train on Saturday anymore. And then I turn around on Sunday. I don't want to go on a 5-hour ride and not see my kid. So it was in 2 pieces this year. I changed to 5 days on, 2 days off. So all the weekdays on training wise and the weekends off. But what blew me away, and like, I'm a coach. I've done this for a long time. This should not be a shocker. But I was rolling out. Monday was the day that I added something because Monday was typically an easy day, right? So for a while there, for like a month and a half, I'm like, okay, I'll ride on Monday, but I'll just ride base. And then I'm showing up on Tuesday trying to do intervals, but often riding with athletes, which means the pace is way too high for me to do intervals. And then on Wednesday, I have my group ride with my athletes. And if certain guys show up, the road guys show up, they're riding base and they're 30 pounds lighter than me and they're riding base at 250, 260, 280. So if I'm riding in that group, I'm not riding base. But it took me embarrassingly long to realize that Monday needed to be my hardest day because that's the day I came in rested. And so I started doing a block like Monday VO2 max work, Tuesday going on the Stages group ride, or the former Stages, Pat Warner's group ride that meets Tuesdays at noon, which is
Turned out
Tuesday, solidly difficult.
Yes.
And then show up on Wednesday for my group ride. And I sit in the back. But throughout that long way to get to, what I realized is I had forgotten how to go hard. I just flat out had forgotten what it was like to be fresh and go into a workout where I was truly going to hurt myself. And I was going to make a decision, because I'm coaching myself, which it really makes it hard, make a decision to just hurt myself.
Yep.
You can have a million reasons when you're coaching yourself why maybe you don't do this or don't do that. Or I was doing great threshold work. I was doing great other stuff, but minute on, minute offs, just wasn't doing them. You know, like these short, hard 30-second efforts with 90 seconds rest, which I think are hugely important. Just wasn't doing them. I wasn't going deep anymore. And the first couple times I went deep, it's like, oh, wow, yeah, I forgot how to do this. This really, really hurts. And then suddenly it kind of made sense why my first lap in cross had gone downhill over the last 2 or 3 years. So, you know, it was less about an event. And there's plenty of events and there's plenty of things that I think I learn every time I race.
Yeah.
Right. So shifting that calendar, and what really struck me was A, how remarkably difficult it was to make that shift. And then B, how difficult it was to realign all of my training within that shift because I was so used to doing it a certain way.
When you say remarkably difficult, do you mean logistically? Do you mean emotionally?
I think all of those things, not from doing the work. Once I got
habits,
the schedule,
just breaking habits.
Once I got the schedule sorted, it was easy to do the work. Like, it was like, oh my God, I have great legs. I can actually do this work. But it's more when you've been taking Mondays easy for literally 20 years, it's a complete change to then go, oh, I'm going to have to work out on Monday. And maybe I can't get all of my programs done on Monday. Because as a coach, I want to write all my programs on Monday.
I'm the one person in this room that isn't a coach, but as I hear you say this, it sounds to me like spending 20 years with Mondays as your easy day sounds like a training plan plateau of sorts, and mixing it up is turning out to be a good thing for you. Right?
Certainly not hurting me. And I don't know that was necessarily a bad thing because it's kind of the way my life was rolling and it let me do a bunch of other things. It did slow me down in transitioning to changing Monday is an additional day. And I just in my mind went, oh, it'll be base. And then coming around to the fact that, oh no, it's not going to be base. I got to go hard because this is when I have good legs. This is when I have the capacity to do the work.
I don't think I've ever gone hard on a Monday before. That would feel very weird.
It's different. It's just different. It's just really different. And to be there on a weekend when almost all of my peers are going to go on some long, hard ride. Like I'm getting notes from the road team I ride. I don't race with them that often, but I'm on the group chat. Oh, we're going to do 4 hours today. Oh, we're going to do this. Oh, we're going to do that. I can't do that.
Right.
Or I could, but I just wouldn't see my family. It's not what I want to do.
Yeah. Trevor, what lesson have you learned recently from an event that you may or may not have completed?
I learned that I am slow.
Wow.
Everybody needs that lesson every once in a while.
Keep your eyes opened a little bit.
My lesson was Tobago last year. I have had this thoughts of I'm going to get back to my old fitness level at Tobago. And I've had this thing. I've raced it 13 times now, but it's all been in my 40s and 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And so every year that I go, in the past, I'd always guest on teams. And every year the teams would just look at me, who's the old guy? And it'd be really disrespectful to me the days before the race going, oh, we're going to have to carry this guy. Who is he? And never let it faze me because I'm always like, first day of the race, I'm going to hand them their and they will respect me.
Quick reminder, everyone.
Yeah.
Trevor races with anger.
Yes, he does.
Yes.
Fueled by spite.
So it was great. When they're disrespecting me, I'm like, I'm going to make them pay for that. And I'd have a great couple first days, and then they would respect me. This year I went. They gave me the huge disrespect. Oh, we're going to have to carry this guy. He's going to be no use. And 3 days into the race, I'm like, yeah, they were right.
No use, huh?
They were completely right.
Wow.
So
What happened?
I'm proud to say I was not the slowest guy in the race. But when the top dogs hit it and went hard, it was bye-bye. I'll be kind of in this middle group.
Is that age? Is that training? What's different? Is that, Trevor, I got to ask publicly, is it because you have a girlfriend now?
Ooh.
That's
Ooh,
why he's
good
wearing
question.
that shirt.
The shirt is because of her. I'm not going to argue with that one.
Next,
I
there will
mean,
be a gold chain.
Honestly, I don't want to bring a potluck down. Since I developed AFib, my power has dropped substantially. And what I've noticed is I have an intolerance now to really high intensity. So,
No, it makes
the
sense.
VO2 over threshold sort of,
Right.
yeah.
so we hit a hill and they're, going super hard for 3-4 minutes to try to pop people. I'm one of the people I'm like, can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I just can't.
I mean, that used to set your AFib off before, right? Is it setting it off now, or do you just not have that power anymore?
Well, so I have what's called proximal AFib, and I always mispronounce that. But it's basically when you switch from a really strong sympathetic tone to a parasympathetic tone that causes it. So if we hit a hill really hard for 2 minutes, I'm fine.
Mhm.
But if you
Coming
come
back
over
up.
it and there's, you have it a little
Descent, yeah.
downhill and I'm not pedaling, I'm instantly an AFib and that's it.
Okay, that just means you need to go hard over
Yeah.
the top of the hill and break away.
Which is what I've literally tried to do in some races where I'll actually take the hill not as hard, let them get a little ahead of me,
And then close it.
and then try to close on the descent. That's one of the few ways I can keep myself on a rolling course
Interesting.
out of
You
AFib.
could just clamp down on your brakes and keep pedaling like max aerobic power.
I've tried that. Honestly, I have tried all these things. But it's honestly, I now, like, people look at me and go, what the hell is your strategy? I'm like, my heart. Like,
Yeah.
literally, I have to race differently now because of the AFib to keep myself from going into AFib.
Absolutely. I do love that all the random stuff we're coming up with.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
Trevor's
just
in there.
comedic.
Yeah.
Trevor's like, well, I tried that.
Yeah.
Of course I tried that.
Yes.
You idiots. I mean, why wouldn't I try that?
That's
When
hilarious.
you have this, you get all sorts of delusions of, oh, if I do this or that,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
going to
yeah.
fix it.
Yeah.
Not going with the, I'm old, I have AFib, suck it up and deal.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Does that change your outlook on racing and events moving forward?
Well, I still love to race. I still love to hop and race, even though I know over half of the time I'm going to get popped because I go into AFib. And once you're in AFib, you just can't race anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't mind doing local races because if I get popped, I just ride home. I'm much less willing now to travel to races and pay the expenses because if I go into AFib, it's a big loss
Yeah.
of money.
Right.
Hence the double down for you on the TT series too, right?
So I love that Wednesday night TT series because it's steady. So I rarely go into AFib. And when I do, I go, well, there's a race next week. So
Right.
Mm.
Right.
Rob, give,
No, I
us,
wanna
give
talk-
us a lesson.
I want to talk to you because you
Yep.
just did a mountain bike race, right?
Well, yeah, my lesson has to do with, there's lots of lessons I learned over the last couple weeks because I did a 50K trail run on one weekend.
Wow.
It's just dumb.
Proud of you.
And
I'm
then
not.
it went amazingly well. And then 2 weekends later, I did the Hundo, so a 100-kilometer mountain bike race. So
Not an easy one.
not an easy one, 8,500 feet of climbing. So yeah, and on both in Buffalo Creek, so similar trails, not an exact copy, but similar trails. So kind of the lesson I learned was there's many. One, a cyclist can turn themselves into a runner.
Yes.
Don't be afraid.
And actually, on that note, how much do you run? Because I see on Strava some of your run, and I'm like, this guy, man,
well, he just did a
hauls.
50K trail run.
So this
So 50K.
This spring, I ran a
You
lot
will.
more than I normally do because I knew I was doing a 50K. And I've only done one marathon on a road in my life, and it went terribly. I didn't train too much for it. It was all downhill, like 4,000 vertical drop. Trying to qualify for Boston, went out, super hard. and went to 20 miles super hard and then just exploded, as a lot of people do. So yeah, I was doing some speed work on the track. I was doing some long runs, but I was combining it with cycling. I didn't just do running. And I think it was just fun to be able to go out, do this 50K and feel really strong until the end. I came in 4th overall, averaged 8-minute, 30-second miles for that whole.
Again, pretty hilly course.
You're a freak.
Yeah, 4,000 feet of vert. On feet, that's a lot more than it sounds compared to riding bikes. And then, 2 weeks later, had the cycling fitness to go and do a 5-hour mountain bike race.
I think they cross over so well.
Yeah, and that's, I've done this a lot more than probably most pure cyclists do because I really enjoy running and I particularly like trail running. And as life has changed and obligations have changed, less time for cycling, it's nice to have running as an outlet because it's so simple. It's very efficient. I can run out my back door where I live. I'm spoiled with trails. So just going, and you guys know me, I didn't have any data. I don't run or ride with really any data. It was all by feeling, and I was feeling my way towards a combination of these two things that worked out both for the run and for the mountain bike race. I came in 12th overall. So good fields, not amazing fields for either of them, but still I felt very accomplished at having done that. So the lesson is not that I want to brag. The lesson is that you can combine things very easily, create a good engine and perform at both sports and not really take away from one or the other.
A lot of the adaptations cross over, especially the central ones.
I run every morning, and we don't run very far. My wife and I run as the kids ride to school. We drop them off at school, and we go for a run. I was talking to Jim Miller a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, that's not a run, it's a jog. If it's less than 3 miles, it's a jog. I'm like, okay, I jog every morning. Right? I don't know that he's wrong, but
I always figured jogging was a slower pace than running, but
whatever.
I'm not going to argue with Jim.
Yogging. I want
yogging.
I think the J is soft. But what I've always been kind of impressed with, when you get above 20 minutes and you're in that kind of 25 to 30 minute range, there's an aerobic piece to that puzzle. And running, you mentioned it being efficient. It's so good bang for the buck. You go for a 30-minute run, 45-minute run.
It's worthwhile.
You
go for a 30-minute bike ride.
It's hard to make it worthwhile.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Unless you're going super hard, which you don't want to do all the time.
Right. And being older and being in my 50s, there's that metabolic benefit of 2-a-days, and you have this short, quick, easy. It's running, so it's never easy for me. But you got to work out in the morning. Then do your thing, do some work, go for a ride. It's a huge metabolic benefit. And I can't tell you the benefit I think I've gotten on the bike from just those morning runs.
My lower back actually feels a lot better having done a lot more running. I think because running sort of tightens you up in certain ways, so it actually makes me stretch more, which I don't do if I'm just riding a bike, but it also is strengthening things and building characteristics in my body that are neglected when you're locked into a certain position on a bike all the time.
Chris McGovern, somebody who I've worked with at Forever Endurance, but I know through the cross world, he has always been big on running, pushes the hips back forward, tightens up the front side of the body, which in cyclists, you're always kind of bent over and sat down. And he has been adamant for years that little bit of running tightens that up and makes riders springier. A little bit more in the sprint. And it's anecdotal.
It's strangely, it like lessens the imbalances that you get.
Well, variety of activity is important, right? Especially as, we've all been riding and doing a very similar activity for 20 or 30 years or whatever. To have that variety is great just for general health and general structure improvements.
What did you learn?
That I'm a quitter.
Grant is pointing at Rob.
You. Hey, you.
I forget I'm on a podcast. What did you learn?
Or you forgot his name.
Either one.
What did this guy hear?
What did the pickle man learn?
Pickle man. I learned that I'm a quitter. Tell you the truth. No, I don't know. The last event that I did was...
Talk about a downer.
It's true. It's true. But quitting is good, I think, sometimes.
Well, there's your lesson. When is it good? Tell us when it's good.
it's good when you realize you don't want to be doing what you're doing.
That's true.
The truth.
If it's not fun, don't do it.
Exactly. If it's not fun, don't do it. No, and I think that the last event I did was Finland Gravel. You know, people that listen to the podcast regularly know that I did maybe 2 years ago, I think at this point, Trans Portugal. And then a month later, I did Finland Gravel.
That long ago?
I know it was, yeah. And I got a quarter of the way into Finland Gravel and I wasn't having fun. I went out a little harder than I probably should have just because, in my opinion, the first few K were like a little bit sketchy and loose, and I just didn't want to get caught up.
You didn't want to deal with it.
The riffraff, you know. And I ended up in a group with a lot of like the leading women in the race, and they were racing. They were there to place and to do well. And I was getting literally elbowed into the gutter by people trying to hold the wheel and trying to take the wheel off of me so that they could get in the draft.
Right.
And frankly, I was there because I wanted to see the Finnish countryside. And, you know, I've realized that I love big adventures. And that doesn't mean just riding easy and touring around. I also love to push myself and try. But if literally push comes to shove, I'm not necessarily in a place that I want to shove back at this point. You know, I realized I was like, man, this is like kind of cutthroat out here. Like, I don't want to, you know, end up hurting myself or whatever. And I peeled off out of the group and I stood on the side of the road and I rerouted my Garmin as another group went by. And I thought, oh, you know what? Maybe I should just hop into this group. And I was like, no, I'm going to take this new path home. And my Garmin, I chose off-road in my routing, and it routed me off-road all right. Like, I don't know about that one, Garmin. I think I went through a lot of private property. Sorry, Finnish people. But that riding back to the town was 10 times more fun than it took to get me there. The adventure through the forest and through the fields and literally over the fences was incredible. And that has really, as I'm now looking, I've also, listeners know I've kind of gone through more kidney issues. I had kidney issues before this and again, some kidney issues after. And I'm back in a place where I'm training. And I think next year I kind of want another sort of big adventure. But as I'm looking at events, I'm looking for things that are a little bit less racy and cutthroat and putting on a number. And what I loved about Trans Portugal was it was like a hard group ride every day with your friends. And you know, there was a good camaraderie because it's multiple days kind of with the same people in the same group. Everybody was there to kind of push and encourage everyone. Everyone was there to ride hard without question, but it wasn't like they were trying to ride you into the gutter. It wasn't like they were happy when they dropped you, you know. I'm looking for events like that in the future. If anybody knows of anything, you know, especially mountain bike stage stuff, you know, I would certainly love to hear about it.
Sounds like Cape Epic is right up your alley.
I don't think it is.
That's right.
To tell you the truth, I don't.
You don't think that's a group ride?
I don't think that's a group
people
ride.
Go a little too hard there.
I think people are really trying a little bit.
Yeah. Couple of them.
Yeah, just a few.
Couple of them.
Do you want Rhabdo? Go to Cape Epic.
Oh, the other thing too, though, I got to throw out there. I don't like camping, and so I don't want to sleep on the ground.
Why don't you just do laps from your house?
I was going to suggest there's this great bike packing race that goes all around Montana.
Oh, okay.
It basically,
Montana's pretty sweet.
dude, the course looks ridiculous.
But it involves camping.
But it involves
Camping.
minimalistic
So this
camping.
is, I've never done any true bike packing, and my probably false impression of it is that you're just kind of riding along slow on a really heavy bike, and that in of itself doesn't sound fun to me. I do want to be able to ride fast and hard.
It's up to you whether you go fast or you go slow.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, you obviously
think about how fast you can go downhill with a heavy bike.
you can take many different approaches with bike packing races, just like you can with other types of races. Just know that bike packing races, it's usually a start and a finish line, and the clock never stops. So there's this urge to keep going, and there isn't a destination each day, and so that's when you get into sleep deprivation, and that's when you get into, I'm in this beautiful place, but it's nighttime and I can't see anything that I'm passing. So there's like some conflict there. So yeah.
Hey coaches, this is Susie Sanchez from USA Cycling. We've partnered with Fast Talk Laboratories to upgrade our coach education program. By the end of this year, USA Cycling will have over 50 new CEU courses for coaches, produced by experts from Fast Talk Labs. Visit usacycling.org/coaches to learn more.
All right, we need to move to the next question.
Trevor's
yours or mine?
I think yours, Trevor.
I think obviously yours.
Okay, I'm always in the middle.
If Griffin was here, then
You're right. You're right. And for anybody who wants to say that Griffin keeps us on track, no, Griffin would have ruined this right now.
Trevor, go quickly.
So my question,
we miss you, Griffin.
and we can cover this one pretty quickly. Intervals.
Don't do them. Done.
Yep.
But if you do,
We just talked about having
them on
fun.
Monday.
You kind of hinted at this earlier, and I'm going to start with my answer to this. But you have over-unders, where you go over threshold for a short period of time, then under threshold for a period of time and go back and forth. Or you have the just straight high intensity intervals where you go really hard for 20 seconds or 30 seconds or 1 minute. And then you have a recovery where you're barely spinning the pedals, and then you do another effort and keep going back and forth like that. Same thing, pros, cons, differences.
No, they're not the same thing.
Well, I'll throw a third one out there. The third one is the longer interval that is relatively steady.
Yeah, so
right
I'm leaving
at ish threshold.
I'm leaving those out. So I'm just comparing
You're
these
leaving
two.
those out. Oh.
And so I'm going to start with my answer, which you touched on, which is sometimes in intervals, you got to train yourself how to suffer a little. And my issue with the over-unders, I noticed, is because you know you can't fully recover, you don't go really hard either. So it never really hurts. Where if you do like 30 seconds and you know you got 30 seconds to a minute to recover, you can destroy yourself in that 30 seconds.
I mean, with over-unders, I don't know that I've ever put over-unders on somebody's program in terms of caring too much about the over. I'm putting over-unders on somebody's program to show them they can recover at the under. And even this is Neil Henderson has this great workout, Batman's, where you go hard on the intro, and Chris has done them. I know Rob's done them. Everybody in this room, but you've probably done them too at some point.
I've given them to my athletes.
But you do that 20 seconds super hard, 120, 130%. And then you have this middle period that's threshold. And for the first minute and a half, you're sitting at threshold. You're like, I can't do this. I'm going to die. And I did these, again, been doing stuff like this for 15, 20 years, right? I did them the other day, and I was a minute in going, God, I don't know if I can hold this. And like clockwork, between a minute and a half, I go, oh, I'm okay now. And I can just sit here at threshold. So I like over-unders with that mindset of, look, you can recover under. You can do this. This is all right. And so it's getting people ready for the surge of a race. And then, all right, get your wits about you when you're slightly under, or pace lining. Breakaway pace line, front of a group pace line. Oh, God, that pull was so hard. I think I'm okay now. I can do another pull. So that's why I put them on the program. If I'm putting something on there that's like, we're going to go way over and recover full on, maybe I'm working true lactate production. Like, I want to flood them. I want them to hurt. I want them to almost stall out muscularly. And then the other thing I'm putting in there for is, especially up here, I want people...
Up here meaning at altitude.
At altitude, I'm sorry. Yeah, I want people to push really high watts at a really high cadence, which means you're in pretty big gear. Like, you're not spinning your way through this. You're spinning because you're trying to produce the watts. Like, you are cranking. And I want people to get used to that feeling. And I love that feeling. I get vilified for this on a trainer.
High cadence, high force.
High cadence, high force on a trainer. Because you don't have to worry about anything. You can just sit on a trainer. And
it's a little bit safer, a little easier to be confident.
Yeah.
If things go south, you don't keel over on the side of the road. Yeah.
And it's also easier to get the cadence up and keep it up because there's not a change in terrain. Because where do we tend to do these? People tend to do this stuff uphill. And I've gotten to the point where I don't do intervals uphill anymore. I do them on the flat because I don't race uphill. I race on an undulating terrain. So I better be able to put out 450 watts slightly downhill,
which is,
or on a flat,
which is very
hard.
different.
Yeah, it's totally different
uphill,
animal.
Yeah.
So, yeah, long-winded answer to get to that. Like, I think they're training very, very different things. Over under, I'm training the under. I'm looking to get people to think about the under. On a big rest, big force, I'm wanting them to think about the force, without a doubt.
And yeah, I think that if we're training people to go deep, it's sort of in two different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the hard stuff, the really hard 30-second ons, maybe like the 5 minute at max aerobic power type of stuff. That's really teaching someone to deal with pain and to go deep and to physically hurt themselves, right?
Yep.
But if we're talking about longer interval sets with over-unders, the over is really just sort of flooding the system, maybe with a little bit of extra lactate. And then the under is teaching them to sort of be able to sit in and recover and allow the alarm bells to turn off. The hard efforts turn the alarm bells on. The under effort teaches you to turn them off. And sometimes you have to do that actively.
I mean, there's a lot going on in your brain that turns this off. There's a lot of those things about how deeply are you breathing?
Yep.
How calmly are you breathing? Are you grimacing? How relaxed is your face? All these things are things that you're going to have to make an active choice about. So that's where the mental strength comes in of like, I got this. I can do this. Just relax.
I think one of the best ways, and Trevor, if we actually take your two concepts and combine them together, is one of my favorite workouts, Grant, for exactly what you're talking about. And that is a set of, say, 30-30s or 20-40s, and then into sub-threshold.
Yeah.
Even if it's 5 minutes of sub-threshold.
Yep.
Because that first minute is alarm bell city. And in the second minute, you're like, you know what? I think I might have this. And at minute 3, you're like, I feel pretty good. And by minute 5, you're like, I probably could have kept going.
Yeah, and that's a nice way to end an interval, right?
Yeah, Neil Henderson loves that.
Yep.
Yeah, he
Throw
does.
that at the end.
I do a lot of that with athletes kind of as we get toward race season and we're really sort of working on this like pushing mental skills sort of thing. Yeah.
I think there's a big mental piece to all these things, but they're different mental pieces, right? And what you're training physiologically, totally different. I think they're different animals. You know, you can get into, I want to produce, I want to clear, how long can I sit here? But I used to say this when I was talking to swimmers, like the 50 freestyle is like somebody walking up to you and punching you in the face. It hurts a lot, but it doesn't hurt for that long. The mile, 1650 in swimming, is like somebody grabbing your hair on your head and just pulling it. It's a tolerable pain, but it's going to go on for a really, really, really long time. And how you deal with each one of those things kind of defines who you are as an athlete. There are athletes who naturally want to go out and run the 400 or go run the 800, which the 800 is like the most painful thing on the planet, right? 200 freestyles.
But the first lap isn't.
No, first lap feels great. The second lap is just like lactate bath. And your mind, talk about alarm bells, right? You never really feel like that running the 5K or the 10K. It's a different pain. You're sitting there in the first 2K of a 10K going, really? I got to do this for another 8K? I don't know about that. But those pains are different. And exposing people to those different things are really, really important. I mean, you'll have athletes that come to the table and all they've done is threshold and tempo work. And I'm throwing that high-end stuff at them. And I'll have athletes that are going, I can't do this. Like I can't. I don't think I can last 30 seconds at that power. But then I'll also have athletes that come back and go, that was easy. And then I go look at their power and they're not even close to where they need to be because they can't go there.
This is also, I think it's important, you know, I'm erg mode king for a lot of things, but I think that stuff like this really ought to be done in a free living situation where you have to make the choice to be able to push yourself. You can't just rely on the computer to do it for you and you're just sort of following along. You have to be actively involved in pushing yourself forward.
I tell athletes all the time that I give these, do not be staring at the bike computer. This is go as hard as you can without absolutely exploding.
This reminds me, Trevor, of an athlete you used to coach who had a really hard problem hurting himself in races, but not in training.
Yeah. I remember that story vividly.
And that was a mental component. And
But everybody gets good at different things. I have an athlete right now who's in his mid to later 60s. Their FTP, their threshold is down. They're older. But if I give those high-end workouts, they knock them out of the park. Going to 130 or 150%, they have a capacity to produce that kind of power for a short period of time. But it's like that long sustained one that's kind of dropped off. They've raced mountain bikes for a really long time. They're great at this punchy stuff. And so you have that athlete that their threshold might be way down here, but you can't do the VO2 max work on 120 or 130% of that threshold because that's too easy for them. You have to go to a different place.
Yeah.
I was playing around with a workout that one of my athletes was coming up with for people they coach. And I was like, yeah, I'll go do it. I'll play around with it. And it's basically go 120 to 140% for as long as you can. Stop, rest for a minute, and then do it again. And you always get a minute rest. You go as long as you can, but you're trying to get to 20 minutes of total work at that energy system. And I came back and I was like, okay, I don't think you can do it as one-to-one rest. That's how we originally had talked about it. I think it has to be a minute rest in between. And he laughed at me at one point and goes, dude, you live in that world. Like that for you makes a ton of sense because you're going to recover super quickly in your mind. Because think about other people. I'm like, oh yeah, there's some people that definitely going to need one-to-one with this. It is so different of how you see those things. Like you and I grew up sprinting. And so breathing out of our eyeballs, we'll go, okay, just give it a second. This will pass.
Yeah.
Other people, you're breathing out of their eyeballs. They're scared.
Yeah.
Because it feels like you're going to die. Again, your body's screaming evolutionarily, stop it or you're going to die. I mean, that's exactly what your brain's yelling at, your body.
I mean, I do think that we see athletes all the time. I saw it in high school. I saw it in college athletes where I think that people feel safer on Tuesday when they're doing the intervals and they're doing them with their friends and there's nothing on the line. Like it doesn't matter if you go too hard and blow up and they will go 110%. But on Saturday, when it's race day, there's something to lose. And suddenly sort of this fear, well, if I go too hard, then I might blow up and I might not finish well and people might not think as much of me and it just sort of snowballs from that. And I think that people end up they lose the confidence to put themselves out there. To be uncomfortable takes a lot of confidence to know you're going to come out of that okay. I think something that's important to bring up is what we're talking about is not about hurting yourself. It's not about pain or anything like that. But it is about bringing yourself to a place where I think that you unlock more performance. And for me, as a story, you guys are familiar, behind my house is Bow Mountain Wagon Wheel Gap. And so I would do intervals up that. You, Chris, you're like one of the KOMs on it, and I'll never get to your time.
Where do you live?
In North Boulder, Wonderland.
Oh, you lived in South Boulder. Oh, no, wait, never mind.
Yeah, you think it's someone else. And, I would go and I would do my efforts. I would always do them at a particular wattage. And I would be able to hit that wattage, but it would be pretty hard. And I could never go harder than that wattage. And one day I was just like, you know what? Forget it. I'm head down. I'm not going to care about the numbers. I'm just going to do whatever I can do. And I was like 30 watts higher. And every other interval I ever did after that was also 30 watts higher. One effort, I broke through a plateau, my performance was forever improved.
Well, this was part of what motivated me to ask the question, because this spring I decided to do over-under intervals. Not a huge rationale for it because, like I said, I don't have any event that I'm training for. And I'm like, hey, they sound like fun. And was executing them perfectly, was feeling really good about it. Then I went to my first Wednesday morning velo. I got attacked. I did a 30 seconds really hard and went, oh my God, I forgot how much this hurts and just couldn't tolerate it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really a thing. Side note to your breakthrough, this is why somebody who gets caught doping should be banned for life, because doping unlocks that next thing too. You look down and you can push a certain watt. Your brain believes you can push a certain watts, and it changes what you're capable of doing. This is what happened with the super suits in swimming too. People went these ridiculous times were out of control. Then we banned the suits, and they kept going those times.
Once you know something's possible, it's the same way kids growing up in the bike park. Well, that guy did a backflip off that jump, so I can do one too, Like you watch the progression of kids with some tricks and stuff.
So when I was completely different build, was a football player.
No, you weren't.
I was.
No, you weren't.
And so
so soccer.
Yes. There you go. My biggest goal, and I won't give you the number, was to curl a certain weight.
40 pounds.
60. Which you could probably do no problem. But I was working on it for a year.
You're not kidding.
I'm not kidding.
Okay, it was 60.
It was 60. But for a year, I couldn't do it. And I was in the weight room talking with some buddies, and I went to pick up the 55s and accidentally picked up the 60s. Yeah. And I'm sitting there curling going, Dan, I'm not having a good day. This is hurting, but I'm getting through it. And then my friend's like, Trevor, you're curling the 60s. And I'm like, what?
Dude,
And then I could
lying
do
to
it.
people is the best way to improve their performance.
Yep.
There's
Coaching brought to you by.
there's countless studies where
No, it's
if you just
100% true.
misreport the workload that somebody's doing, they'll think that they're only doing 300 watts, but they're
Yep.
really doing 315, and they
Yep.
can do it.
Yep.
Yep. There's a lot of that. Hello, Fast Talk. It's me, Grant Holicky. You may know me as the co-host of the Fast Talk podcast, but I'm also the head coach and founder of Forever Endurance. At Forever Endurance, we believe in selfless coaching. We believe that 80% of endurance performance is psychological and that our coaches put you in charge. Visit foreverendurance.com to see more about how we can help you achieve your goals in cycling, cyclocross, and triathlon. Okay, we blew through your minute warning.
Yeah. So let's go to your question.
Oh, that's all right. Enough time for Fast Talk today.
Appreciate the contempt with the blew through your 1 minute warning.
Okay, so mine is this simple training question. Well, not simple. Hopefully it's not simple at all. Is all based the same. And to give some context to this, why I thought of this was I was out riding last week, did a super hard VO2 max session on Monday, did Turned Out Tuesday on Tuesday, and lasted till the end.
Wow.
And it was...
With a B group.
No, it was with the A group.
Okay.
They were all old farts like me. None of the youngins showed up.
Okay.
Which, like, you're like, I got a shot. And then Wednesday, I went out for a base ride. My base was a lower average on that Wednesday base ride. And I felt very good about that. I was targeting purposely because of how I felt, probably just right around 200, 190 to 210. That's where my base world lived. I'll kind of use 320 as a threshold, right? So I was living in that base world. But I'll go out, if I have a base ride after recovery day, I'm riding base at 220, 230, 240. Heart rate's going to be typically somewhat similar. The RPE is very similar. So are those different base days or are they essentially the same base day? That's one part of the question. Second part of the question is a climbing base day the same as a flat base day? Because the big thing that came out earlier this year that everybody lost their mind about was an interview with Tade, where he said, yes, on my base days, I'm doing whatever the hell it was, right? 300 and whatever watts on my base days. But as he talked more, and part that didn't get any coverage was that ridiculous number was what he was riding base on his hilly base days. And he said, I'll ride my flatter base days at this number, which was still ridiculous, but more in the realm of capacity of the mind.
So was he giving average or normalized power? Because that is important.
I don't even know that he stated the difference, but obviously those two things are very, very different. So yeah, what do you think?
So I'll start with the hilly versus flat. And that's part of why I was asking. I think there's a big difference
A huge difference.
because I think when you're doing
one
hilly
time you're
days-
going uphill and then,
so you're going to have big variance in the wattage.
right.
You're going to probably be a little above your zone going up the hill, and then you're going to be way below your zone coming down the hill. And I've noticed doing base rides around here where I go up a hill, I realize, well, I planned a 4-hour ride today, but the last hour 15 is just going downhill at 50 watts.
Yep.
So it was really a 2-hour, 45-minute ride, which you wouldn't have the same thing on the flats.
Yeah, I mean, it is and it isn't. You're still on the bike. There's still some other things that are going on. You're still in some degree of effort but the up, and the big thing for me with this is the uphill is typically a little above zone.
And so then, in my opinion, it's not a base day. For me, when I'm looking at zone distribution, I'm looking at time in zone. And you're both bringing up really important points. A 3-hour ride could have 50% of it in a recovery zone because you're coasting downhill or whatever else. You can't count that as 3 hours of base. And that's assuming that you were going uphill at an appropriate base zone. The other side of it is just because your ride averaged power over the course of 3 hours was, say, 200 watts or whatever, and that's in your base zone. If you did half of that at 300 and half of that at 100, again, that is not a base ride. You spent 0 minutes in the actual base zone.
Right.
And that's why I was asking about normalized versus average.
Sure.
And I would contest that most people probably can't do a hilly base ride. I mean,
Not well.
I tested Yanni Brakovic one year, and he did a cool down up Sunshine Canyon, which makes sense when you're a 130-pound climber, but
Right.
the rest of us, unless you're Chris Case, probably can't go uphill easy enough to stay within a zone.
There are some ways to do it. Like around here, I know a lot of our listeners don't know the climbs. I would never do a base ride where I'm doing like Flagstaff and Sunshine, which are these steep climbs.
Yeah, but you could do left hand.
Well, I'll do left hand, or I'll climb up to Estes Park where it's 4 or 5% the whole way up.
You go up 36 to Estes?
Yes.
Of course you do.
Oh, you're crazy.
You're
man.
the only, he's the only person, right, in this world that chooses to
He
do
also
that.
rides
I
on
moved
93
here
sometimes.
from Toronto. I was just in Toronto this weekend. I think I came close to my death like 10 times riding the roads there. So it's just a different perspective. In Toronto, people bike very far to get to something as nice as 36.
Oh my God. Okay. Anyway, back on topic.
You know where I almost died today? On the bike path in Boulder.
course you did.
That is death on a stick. We'll come back to that some other day. I think that should be a question. Anyway.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you have a very highway grade-ish climb, then you can do base training on it.
Because left hand, you can ride base on the way up, and then you can choose to be in probably
you
a
can be
big enough.
pedaling a low base on the way back.
You can do that for sure. And then to extend your point, the other thing that happens when you climb, descend, you're not stringing together a long period of base.
Sure.
You're chunking that up and getting big recovery in there, which is not giving you the same response physiologically to a 3-hour ride where you just sit in base.
Yeah.
I think that's something that, to me, in turn, hilly versus flat, this is one of the reasons why everybody says Boulder's a great place to train, because you have the hills, but then you can go 4-hour, 5-hour flat base rides easily and not even begin to explore everything. But keeping the chain tight for 3 to 4 hours
it does something different to your body.
it's harder than people realize because they don't typically do it.
Here's one of the best indicators I have. Dr. Sala and I have worked on a chart in WKO that divides your heart rate by power. So use your heart rate and then your 6-minute wattage. So max heart rate to 6-minute power is kind of equivocal, and then does a rolling average of both. And it should just be a straight line going across until you start experiencing cardiac drift.
Right.
And even though people say, the hilly climbs, long rides are hard, I'll look at an athlete on one of those and you never really see that cardiac drift.
You don't see it drift, right?
Where you send somebody out in that long, steady flat ride, you'll see it's flat and then whoop, starts kicking up.
Right.
You see their body responding differently after a certain period of time.
Now, we are unique in that we do have these opportunities, but I think that we all work with athletes whom don't have a lick of flat ground anywhere near them. It's a series of 50-foot rolling hills, 100-foot rolling hills. And with those athletes, I say, hey, you're going to have to be riding base in a variable situation. Try to make that as little variable as possible. Don't charge up those hills.
Yes, thank you.
Sit and base up the hills. Push a little bit as you go over the top. Make sure that you're staying in zone. Try to pedal down the backsides. You probably can't, but that's okay. But do everything you can to try to moderate that effort so that it's staying within that zone as much as possible. And don't get sucked into this. I worked hard there so I can back off here, and it averages out to a base effort, because it doesn't.
And one thing I will say about this, very good and very, very experienced cyclists fall prey to this. I have high-level pros that go out for their base rides, and they always turn west. They want to go up in the hills.
Yep.
And getting them to, I have gotten to the point where in some people's programs, I am writing hilly base ride, knowing what a hilly base ride is, which is a lot of tempo. And that's okay. And for the gravel athletes, that's great. Let's go get a crap load of tempo today. And then I have other athletes where I'm like, I'll do that on one block, and then it is 5 hours flat base ride.
Yep.
I want the chain tight the entire time. So starting to distinguish between those two types of quote unquote base rides has been really, really important.
Yeah.
What about the other?
I was going to say, let's talk about the first part of your question here. And that's kind of like a high base versus low base. I mean, I think that this is coming out to, or?
I think some of that for me is the question of what is more important, the actual number you see on your power meter or RPE?
I personally, when I prescribe base rides, it's by heart rate and perceived effort. I don't prescribe them by power. So to me, as As long as your heart rate's in the right range, the perceived effort's in the right range, I could care less if the power is 30 watts higher.
And that's going to fluctuate based on glycogen status, based on recent activity, stuff like that. I'm okay with that because I think that the base range is...
I'll accept your answer.
I'll accept that.
Well, I think
I actually felt complimented. Rob rarely says that.
True. but I think that we talk about zones, right? And we cut stuff so narrow sometimes.
Yeah, we do.
And frankly, I think that the base zone is actually a heck of a lot broader than people think it is.
How did you decide what wattage to sit at? Was it based on feeling that day, or was it like, I've done this on Monday, I've done this on Tuesday, so I need to drop it by this? And then
I almost always do it based on feel because you're going to have days where you roll through those 2 days and you feel like Superman still somehow. And that's
so in that case, it would be up where it was normally sitting.
Yeah,
right?
But to Rob's point, I think one of the things that I've said for years, and I think people sometimes take this the wrong way, is you almost can't go too easy on a base day.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you're too low, you're in zone 1, oh God, zone 1, you're still getting a lot of the same response that you're going to get in base. It's not exactly the same, but you're still riding a bike. You're still turning your legs over. You're still breathing. You're still pedaling.
That is exactly my issue is the number of people that say, well, base training is zone 2 and it's right at the top of zone 2. And they spend the whole ride sitting right at the edge of that and going, that's the only way to do base.
It's the same thing as like, if a little is something, then I must do more because that means I get a better response. So if zone 2 ends at 200, then I must be as close to 200 as possible.
199, yeah. What I think is wild about that too is that then people will drift into low tempo, and low tempo, are you really getting much of a different physiological response than base? Not much, but you're getting tired. I'll tell you one thing, you're going to have a hard time doing your intervals the next couple days.
It's much more fatiguing.
I mean, I think that if we're looking at the fact that like lactate is beginning to kick up and stuff like that, physiologically, I think that we know that things are a lot different when you're in that low tempo zone. But if you go the other way, let's say that base ends at 200 watts, just for a round number.
Sure.
I do think that there is more of a difference between 200 and 210 than there is between 200 and 160.
Oh, 100%. I would agree with that 100%.
I would be totally fine with somebody being 160 to 200, anywhere in between. That's fine with me.
I think the curse of so much of this is data, right? And the curse of so much of this is CTL and TSS.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because you can go do an appropriate base ride for 4 hours and walk out of that with a TSS of what, 110, 100? I mean, you really can. And that's a super effective 4-hour base ride. You can also
people
go
look
out.
at the TSS.
What's that?
All people look at is the TSS.
They want it to be higher.
Right. And like I went on a 4-hour ride. This should be like 150, 160. I'm like, well, that's not the okay.
I had to take TSS off my bike computer because I started doing that.
Oh God, I never had it on.
And I was doing my base rides right, and I'd look at the TSS and go, ugh, and just feel that temptation to go harder.
Oh yeah, and you know better.
Yes.
I actually have gotten to a point where I'll play a game. I'm starting to figure out an ability to predict what the TSS is based on where you're going, right? I mean, I can go find the formula. It's super easy to find, right? But you start to kind of do it in your head. And so on a day like that Wednesday where I'm, dude, as long as the computer is mostly green and my base zone starts at, I don't know, like 182. If it mostly see green and a little bit of blue, heck yeah. I don't want to see any yellow because yellow means tempo and I can't do it today. Like I know I can't do it today.
I think the bigger issue is duration, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the more duration that you can rack up, the more beneficial that base ride is. And I would take more duration over a couple % increase in intensity any day of the week.
So I got an email actually about 2 weeks ago from one of our listeners, Robert, and I loved this email. And it was right to your point. He's now able on the weekends to do a longer ride. And his question to me, which I've never gotten, I was like, oh, I love this question, wasn't how hard can I go on the base ride? It was how easy can I go and still get benefits? Because he was trying to do those longer rides right at the top end of zone 2. And he said, but on Tuesday when I did my intervals, I didn't have in the legs. So he's like, how easy can I go so that my legs are recovered for Tuesday, but still see benefits? And I'm like, you're thinking about it exactly right.
And in a lot of ways, there isn't it too easy. Just keep going. If you're pedaling, I'm being a little hyperbolic here, but like if you're pedaling that bike, putting force into the pedals, breathing, your heart rate's up a little bit, you're getting so much of what we want from that response. And if you can sit there for 4 or 5 hours, great.
Yeah. For me, I would put a lower bound, probably about like 60% of FTP, anywhere below that. With enough duration, it is certainly beneficial without question.
Right.
But I usually put a low bound of base at about 60% of FTP.
So what I
pretty
told
low.
him is
It's pretty low.
What I told him is similar. I said 65% of max heart rate because that's when stroke volume is maxed out.
Sure.
And that point is the one piece I will throw out that I think is hugely important about this. Base is not defined by one metric. It is defined by a breathing rate, heart rate, stroke volume, a million pieces in that puzzle that create where you are in a zone. The watts are the downstream repercussion. That's what happens when all of that other stuff is going in the right place. You get a number from a watt.
Right.
It's not the other way around. If I push this number of watts, all those other things are in the right zone. Because that can be different by fatigue, sleep, food, age, wind, a million different things. Heat's huge.
Well, guys,
I think we done it.
potluck.
Who wants to do the outro? Chris, as a guest?
This has been another episode of
Fast Talk.
The thoughts and opinions expressed on Fast Talk are those of the individual.
Particularly this week.
A whole bunch of social media stuff.
Social media, hashtag this and that, at forums, and then that thing. And then for Chris Case, no, I'm Chris Case. For Trevor Connor, Fran Holicky, Rob Pickles, I'm Chris Case. Thanks for listening. Bye. Something like that. We're gonna.
Wow, you got out of here in a hurry. Won't let the door hit you on the way out, Case.